An official welcome to everyone joining us on this Sunday night for our JC versus Poly webinar. Really excited to have you here. But more importantly, I'm hoping that the next 1.5 hours that we spend together will give you a lot more information that you'll need to make the correct choice. I know some of you might be debating JC versus Poly, but in fact, for most of us, we already have an inkling of where we want to go. This session will still be very helpful for you because we will be sharing more about JC life, Poly life, as well as other aspects that you might not have taken into account. And we are hoping that this session will be able to address most of those concerns. As mentioned earlier, at any point in time you have questions, feel free to just type it in the chat. This is a very casual, more of like a conversational kind of thing. So don't feel embarrassed or anything in terms of sending in your questions. You can direct your questions to me, the host, or even any of the panelists later. But we'll share more about the panelists later on. So what will we be talking about today? So we'll be talking more about the scoring system in both JC and Poly. So you kind of need to know what you're signing up for, right? If you're going to JC, you need to know how the A-level system is like. And if you're going to Poly, you at least need to know how the GPA is calculated. We'll also talk about university admission, because one key thing about JC versus Poly is how it will potentially affect your admission to university. So we want to shed some light on that so you are able to make a more informed choice if you are still undecided. We will then go on to talk about an overview of Poly versus JC, as well as the pros and cons of each. Then the most exciting segment that I think you guys are most looking forward to is the sharing by our panelists. So we are very fortunate that we invited 2 JC as well as 2 Poly panelists to share more about their JC and Poly life respectively. We're actually reserving a huge block of time for your Q&A. So for you all to send in questions. And of course, as mentioned, at the end of the session, stay till the end, because we'll be doing a giveaway and you stand to win a pair of GV vouchers. That's about it. Okay. If there's a small request, I think try not to do any annotations on screen, because every time you do so, I have to go and remove it. So it's a little bit like troublesome. That's all. All right. So moving into the very first segment. So admission criteria. How do you want to qualify for JC or Poly? All right. So for JC, you'll be tabulated based on your O-level score, your L1, R5 of 20 or below. So as you know, there's of course different criteria for the different JCs. So every year is slightly different, but usually the cutoff is within 1 point at most from year to year. Most of the years, they don't change. If you want to find out for your specific JC what is the cutoff, you can just Google it, right? Very straightforward. So I'm not going to go into detail on that. Later on, we also share more about the difference between the science stream and the art stream. But interesting thing is we actually have another event upcoming to talk about that. So what else? You just need to take note that if you're going to JC, if you're affiliated, so there's bonus points that you can deduct. And of course, if you have CCA and higher mother tongue, you'll also be able to deduct. Okay, so this one, I think L1, R5, pretty straightforward. Even have an article on our website to explain more. For Poly, it's a little different. It's not L1, R5, it's L1, R4. There's a lot of courses, but of course, different courses have different cutoff. And it also depends on which is the Poly that you're looking at, right? So of course, the better Polys, the cutoff will be lower, more difficult to enter, even though it might be the same course across the board. All right. So for admission criteria, I think it's pretty clear cut. You just need to go and Google to make sure the course you're entering, you're clear whether you make the cutoff for it or not. Of course, that might be the question, right? Wow, Daryl, I need like 1 point off. Like, can I still apply? Of course, if you're just 1 point off or 2 point off, you can still apply. But as a matter of fact, would I encourage it? I can't really say I'll encourage it, because the cutoff is there for a reason. There is a good chance that if you don't make the cutoff, meaning you don't make the cutoff meaning even though how much you're passionate about a certain course or a certain JC, you still won't get in, because it's based on meritocracy, right? So if somebody has a better grade than you and they are applying for the same choice, they are more likely to get it than you. You can still apply or potentially appeal, but you just want to be very careful that even if you're really too far off, then I'm sorry that you might have to reconsider your options. Okay, but we can talk more about that later on. Let's move on to the more exciting stuff. Okay, JC kids to be, right? If planning to go JC, right? So how is it like at A levels? So A level is scored out of 90, not 100. So the rank point system is out of 90. In general, what you'll do is you'll do what we call 3H2 and 3H1. So you have a total of 6 subjects used for computation. Each H2 subject is worth 20 points, and each H1 subject is worth 10 points. So 20, 20, 20, that's 60. Then H1, 10, 10, 10. So a total of 90 points. Of course, A means full points, then the points would deduct accordingly. So instead of talking about this, I think half of you don't have any idea what I'm talking about. I think what would be more helpful is to actually give you an example. So let's take a look at Gerald. You're so cute, right? I like this dude. Okay, anyway, let's say this is his score for A level, right? He scored B, B, B. You know, it's actually quite okay, you know, it's like scoring straight Bs, and his econs and his project work is actually an A. So if you tabulate his total rank point is around 81, I will consider this to be quite average lah, or maybe not too bad. I don't really know lah, but I would say this is quite okay in terms of A-level score. Not your straight A's, but still pretty decent. So if you go and count, right, because his H2 subjects, he's got B, 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 each time you drop a grade is minus 2.5. So A is 20 points, B is 17.5, right? So for H1 is the same, but everything is divided by 2. So his total rank point will be 81. So for Gerald's case, when he applies for university, what are his options? Let's take a look. So if he has a rank point of 81, the following courses that you see on screen, he do not qualify for them, because all of the courses that you see here is what we call a 85 rank point and above. So this is NUS, only NUS, because we're just talking about like mainly NUS and NTU. I'm talking about the national universities. So you can see for the more popular courses like law, medicine, dentistry, or even computer science or business analytics, or even pharmaceuticals courses, you realize that this one you pretty much have to score close to straight A's to even stand a chance to enter. For Gerald's case, he did pretty okay, but he didn't score straight A's, so he doesn't get to go to the top tier of the university courses. Of course, that doesn't mean he didn't do well. He still have a lot of options, but at 81.25 points, what will he qualify himself for? So you can see that there's a lot more other courses that he's open to, that he can consider. But my point is, if you're aiming for the top courses, entering into JC's A-level system, you need to be prepared to be scoring close to straight A's, which is not the easiest, but it's possible. But if you are planning to go for the top tier courses, you need to mental prep. It will not be that easy lah. That's my point. Okay. Of course, you still have a lot of options, like some popular ones like engineering, right? You can potentially enter things like business, or even like any of the humanities courses like psychology, you know, communications, or even like NIE if you want to be a teacher and sorts. So you still have many options if you just score a straight B. But just to let you know what are the standard lah, you need to know what you're signing up for. That's what I always tell you. All right, so it won't be that easy. Okay, now moving on for poly kids. So for poly kids, how is the scoring system like? It is not by rank point. And I think what is more important here that we want to emphasize on is that your rank point, or like your grade point average, your GPA, is scored across the 6 semesters. Because poly is 3 years, right? You have 6 semesters. So every semester you will take certain amount of modules and you'll be graded based on the module, same, your A to F grade. But more importantly, right, even if you say you work let's say you screwed up in year 1 and you work very hard to make it up in year 2 and year 3. The reason why it's quite different from JC is because JC, you only have one final exam. It's a bit like O-level, right? You could have screwed up your prelim, your Sec 3 end of year, doesn't matter. As long as you do well for O-level, you're good to go. Same for A-level, it's only one final test. However, for GPA, it's average across the 6 semesters. Meaning, if you don't do well for one semester, it will pull down your overall average, even though you do well for the others. So in poly, it's very important to be consistent, to be constantly dedicated to maintaining your GPA. Let us share with you what is the GPA grade if you are looking to go from poly to university. All right. So we have Sally, quite cute also. I like the cartoon that I chose. Okay, anyway, Sally here, for the first semester itself, she took 5 different courses. As you can see here, she got different grades for each. So what it does is that the system will tabulate, you'll get your average score. So out of full GPA of 4, she got 3.0, which is still not too bad for the first semester. But let's say this is her first semester, moving into her second semester, Sally just spiraled. Okay, she's just like, I don't want to study. Okay, so she started failing some of her modules and stuff. You can see for this particular semester, her GPA is 1.579. So that is pretty bad, all right? And how does that affect her overall GPA? At the end of year one, this is a cumulative GPA because her semester 2 was 1.5, her previous semester was 3. So her cumulative GPA is actually 2.3. So an average. And of course, with semester 3, 4, 5, 6, the average will keep changing based on the grade. Now, 2.3, where does that get her? Let's take a look. For admission into NUS from Poly, your GPA, if you want to enter the top courses like medicine or law, your GPA needs to be near perfect or at least 3.8 and above, right? Which pretty means you are scoring almost straight A's throughout whole of Poly. So I would say that the bar is pretty high. You need to be very consistent and very dedicated if your final goal is that you want to head to university. Of course, all right, there are different courses with different criteria. You can see for the engineering courses, the bar is slightly lower, but I would say if you're aiming for a national university, NUS or NTU or even SMU, your GPA, I think anything below 3.5, I would consider it quite difficult already. Meaning you need to be on the top of your game across the 3 years if you are serious about entering university. Of course, there are options like private universities or overseas university. So I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm just saying that if you're aiming for NTU or NUS, right, you need to be prepared that your GPA needs to be 3.5 and above, all right, for you to qualify. All right, so this is just to give you a headspace because I think most of you here tuning in, you probably have an inkling or probably leaning towards wanting to attend university or at least having the choice to choose whether you want to attend or not. So you need to roughly know what are the target scores for you to hit. All right, so this is more for university admission because I think not many of us actually consider this as we are choosing JC and Poly. It does matter. All right, now in for a little bit more detailed stuff on like how's the school life different. So for timetable wise, if you're planning to go to a JC, it is actually very similar to secondary school. So you get a timetable, you got classes, you got lessons, recess, and CCA, of course, right? I think the only thing that is quite different for JC is that actually a lot of the teaching, like as you can see here, the learning system is actually done via lectures. So there's actually a mass teaching that is done. Then you actually go back down to the classroom level with your form teacher or your subject teacher to go through that particular topic. So it's like, you know, right now when you're learning, you usually learn in class, right? Then the class is where you learn and you follow up whatever homework you have. But in JC, the system's a bit different. You actually attend lectures to learn. Then in the class-based tutorials, that's when you go through your worksheets and practices. Meaning, it's very difficult for you to keep up if you're missing lectures because it means you're not learning the content. As for attire-wise, it's pretty much the same. You need to wear your uniform. Of course, schools can give you dress-down days with the polo tee or your CCA shirt. But in general, you need to wear a uniform. So in a way, JC is a bit like just upgrading from secondary school. Not that much different. But if you're planning to go to a poly, this is where it's a bit very, very different. In fact, I'll say poly is a lot more similar to university because here, your timetable is based on the lectures and tutorials based on the modules you take. So you might not even see the same group of friends constantly if you guys are taking different modules. Usually in the first or even in the early half of the second year, normally most people take the same foundational courses. So you still see your friends around. But of course, if say you're into business and you have a certain specialization you're going into, like accountancy or marketing or whatever, you might start attending different courses. So you actually get to meet a bit more different people based on the courses you're taking. Attire for poly largely is your own outfit, all right? But of course, on more formal occasions, like during presentations and stuff, you will be required to dress more formally with like a blazer and things like that, right? So you might have to dress a little different. Depends on your course as well. I mean, if you're in sports science, obviously you'll be wearing like sports outfit, right? So it really depends on your course and how the rest of your classmates dress. Learning systems a lot more independent. I would say a lot more hands-on as well. So what this means is that I think instead of like taking an exam, which you'll still have, there could be some projects that's graded across every week, across the semester. And sometimes presentation itself is graded as well. So it depends on the course you're entering, but it is not as academically driven as I would argue for JC, right? So there's the slight difference in terms of the school life. Now, key discussions, right? So how is JC and Poly different? I think the way to look at it is that JC is very similar to secondary school, but I'll say a much upgraded version of it in terms of difficulty and pace. Poly, on the other hand, I'll say it's a lot more similar to your university approach, whereby you're learning skill sets and knowledge specific to the course you're attending to. JC, the academic rigor is very tough. What this means is that it's actually quite tiring. I mean, it's not easy. I think later our JC panelists will share a bit more, but this is in preparation for further studies in university, whereby you'll be subjected to a similar level of academic rigor. On the other hand, Poly is a bit more hands-on in terms of the learning. You're learning more practical skill sets that you might be able to apply directly in your job in the near future, or gaining real-life experiences in a form of internships. On the other hand, JC have none of that. JC is a lot more theoretical in that nature. And of course, I think most of you would be aware JC is a much shorter 2-year program, while Poly is a 3-year program. If you are just going to JC because it's shorter compared to Poly, I think in the grand scheme of things, the 1 year actually doesn't matter that much. And of course, for some Poly kids that clear relevant modules, they can actually clear university in 3 years instead of 4 years. So the game is actually quite even. I think in terms of the time duration, don't be too concerned with the 2-year versus the 3-year. I think you really want to focus on which learning style suits you a bit better. So on to the next area on some of you might ask, you talk so much, tell me which one is better lah. Oh wait, my screen crashed. Right, like JC versus Poly, which is better? The truth is, right, there's no better. It's really about which learning style suits you better, right? So I think the goal of today's webinar is also to hear from me, like the overview, and later from our panelists, for you to find out more about how the school system is like, and to find out whether it is really a better fit for you. And then I would definitely encourage you to take the learning approach that suits you better. At the end of the day, going to JC or Poly is about your personal growth, heading towards the direction that you want to go towards. So today is just about a chance for you to find out more so that when you make the decision, you don't regret. I think that's the main part. So there isn't any that's better. I think I'll be lying if I say one is better than the other. It's just which one is more suitable for you. You just have to keep that in mind. Now, some questions that you can ask yourself in order to determine which is better for you. Number one, I would say, is to consider university, right? How important is attending university for you, right? And more importantly, is the field of work that you're interested in, is it necessary for you to have a degree? Like, I give you an example. Let's say, very random, if you want to be a tattoo artist, right? I mean, don't know, maybe some of you want to be a tattoo artist. Do you really need a university degree for that? I will argue no lah. Or if you want to be going into culinary, right? You want to learn cooking. Honestly, yes, you can still go for university for it, for nutrition and whatever. But I'll say more hands-on, work in the field is more precious than more of academic rigor. But of course, if you want to go into say science, right? You want to go into research and stuff, then I think university would help you down that path more. Then university will be more important. So what you need to ask yourself is what you want to do in the future. Whether you already know it or not, is university very important? If it is, I think you might want to lean a little bit more towards JC, if it's more on the academic route. But if it's a more hands-on, experience is more important than a cert kind of industry, then you might consider taking down the route of Poly, because it gives you more practical, real-life experience and probably connections through your internship and stuff. Second thing you need to consider is your learning style. Now, you've been through O-level, you understand, the grind, how much you have to study. The next question is whether you find the learning style in O-level something that you like. Some people love it, they're like, wow, I love this TYS, I just want to keep doing, right? So if you like that, then I think going on to JC and it's more challenging, it might suit yourself, you might like it, okay? Then, but if you're a more hands-on learner, you want to do projects, right? You like to talk to people, you want to try and error. That one, I'm not too sure whether JC would provide a learning environment like that. And of course, for some of us, I think I saw the message in the chat. What if you have absolutely no idea what you want to do in the future, right? That is super realistic. You are like, what, 16, 17? Come on. How can you already know what you want to do in life? Even when I was 16, 17, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So the last question, I think the last one you can see is passion. Do you really have an idea of what you want to do? Or are you still exploring? Now, if I can give you one heartfelt advice, is that if you are still in the phase of exploring, meaning you don't really know what you want to do yet, I would say you can lean slightly towards JC. Why? Because JC will give you the buffer 2 years to think further and to explore your interests further, and then you make your decision finally when you're going into university. But if you already have a good idea roughly what you want to do, choosing poly might be equally a good option because you'll be able to go down that path a bit further. So what's the point of learning, like, say, H2 physics, H2 chem, H2 math, if what you want to pursue eventually is psychology? I don't know, just giving an analogy here. So I think here there isn't a right or wrong. I'm just speaking from my own experience because you don't really know where you want to go yet. That's very realistic. Then I think the whole point is that you want to buy yourself 2 years to think it through first before you have to make a final decision. For myself, I went to JC. All right, so I can't speak for the poly side, but I mean, I spoke to students as well as people that went through the poly route, like friends. So that's where I'm speaking from. But I think later you can hear from the poly panelists themselves, because right now they're in poly. I think they will be able to best address your concerns. All right. Now, if you do not really know what you are up to yet, meaning you don't know whether you can take on A levels or not, because it sounds quite scary, I think later you can check with the JC panelists to see how intense it is, whether you want to sign yourself up for it. Okay. Now, some of you might be thinking, Joe, I heard this myth that if you go JC, you can go uni very easily. You go poly very difficult. Now, is that true? Is that false? Now, there's a certain degree of truth in that. Now, the truth is that over 70% of students that enter JC ends up in a local university. 70% is quite a lot, but you never know whether you end up in the 30%, right? So I'm still saying that if you want to go to a university, you still need to work hard. Going to a JC doesn't guarantee you end up in a national university or local university, right? At the same time, the poly cohort is a lot bigger than the JC cohort. One in third undergraduate from poly one in third undergraduate in university is actually from poly. So 1/3 of students in university is actually poly kids, and 2/3 are actually JC kids. It will be a bit skewed based on the course as well. But I think the main point I'm trying to make here is it doesn't matter whether you go JC or poly. You still need to do well in order to qualify. So if your end goal is university, you need to be prepared to put in the hard work. Okay? So I think that's the end goal. Like, you still need to work hard regardless. There's no shortcut here. And I think enough of me speaking, because I'm way past, I already finished my university already. So I think what would be more exciting is actually for you guys to hear from the panelists themselves. So we're really very fortunate that the four of you decided to volunteer for this, and very excited to hear what they have to say. So we have Faith. Right now she is current J2 in Hwa Chong. Ryan, my ex-student, currently in TJ. We also have Nicole right now in Temasek Poly, as well as Joshua from Ngee Ann Poly. We'll be giving them each a chance to share more about what they do, more about themselves as well. And of course, you have any questions, you can actually ask them directly. Later, separately, we'll also have a Q&A session for further questions. Right? Remember, this is more of a conversation. So if you have anything, just ask. Don't paiseh, please. Okay, you're typing in the chat. You don't need to unmute to speak. Okay. Anyway, let's see who's up first. Right, so for our panelists, I think Q&A, just send it in the chat, okay? There isn't like a QR code or anything. Faith, hey, I see Faith, you have already unmuted your camera, ready to speak. Okay, no more from me, Faith. You can go ahead. It's all yours.
Okay. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Faith. I'm currently in Hwa Chong, and yeah, okay, like before I begin, I think I wanna preface that I'm from IP. So I think maybe some of my experiences may be slightly different. But I think nonetheless, I can share a bit more about what JC life is like and what you can expect. So in HC, my subject combination is actually an arts combination. So it's not very common to have an arts combination, but yeah. So I take literature, H2 Lit, H2 History, H2 China Studies in Chinese, and H2 Math. Yeah. So if you're wondering how I chose my subject combination, firstly, I chose based on passion because I think since secondary school, I knew that my passion very clearly leaned towards the humanities and arts side of things. So I knew that these are subjects that I would enjoy, and I don't think I would mind. At that point, I didn't think I would mind going really in depth into these subjects and learning more about them. So there's that passion part, and I think it's very important because in JC, the content can be really a lot, and it can be very tiring to learn, especially if you don't really care about the subject. So I would advise that you choose something that you like, or even if it's something that you don't love, at least it's something that you can, be willing to dedicate a certain amount of time to study and do well. I think another thing that played quite a big role in my choice of subjects is knowing what I want to do in the future. So I think someone said that they have no idea what you want to do. I think it's quite normal, but maybe you can like think about it like 大概 what area you want to go into. For example, is it arts or science? And then I think one way of looking at it is you can consider some of your favorite subjects now and stuff, or like certain fields that you're interested in. So personally, I am quite interested in going down routes like law or political science, etc. So knowing what I want to do helped me narrow down my options, because as an art student, some people may say I have no options, but it's just that my options all lie in this area, so it's okay. Yeah. As for CCAs, I would say that JC for me had a lot of there are a lot of CCAs and a lot of options for you to choose from, because I think JCs tend to have more diverse CCA groups and leadership bodies than there are in secondary school. So for me, I was actually in like my school's modern dance CCA at the start of the year until I joined my school's student council. And then afterwards, I then also became a part of what we call a faculty committee, which is sort of like a house system that our school has lah. So sort of like the house committee. Yeah. So I think I won't go too deep into my experiences in these CCAs, but if you want to know more about it, I think you can just like ask questions later. Yeah. So I can share a bit more about my journey in JC so far. I think I'm definitely not I'm not someone that has seen all of JC, because I haven't seen the most crucial part of it, which is the A-level year. But what I can say is that it's definitely not smooth sailing at all, but it's also very, very enjoyable. And I have made a lot of very precious memories that I think that I'm very grateful to have. So firstly, in terms of ACADS, which is something I guess everyone is concerned about, and it's sort of like the elephant in the room. So let's get that out of the way first. So ACADS, you can be prepared for like very like difficult subjects, and content will be very, very heavy. And there's a lot of practicing that you need to do. And also because JC teachers sort of want you to learn things on your own, and they want you to have that initiative to learn and like study before lessons and do pre-readings and stuff like that. So sometimes without doing that, it can be very hard to understand the lesson itself. So it's very, very easy to fall behind. And then furthermore, there are also a lot of tests and quizzes throughout the year. So I guess that could be very stressful for some, as it was for me. So, I mean, just a funny story, which is like during promos, like the entire week, right, I just had like a series of like crises every night because of the paper that was happening the next day, because I subconsciously put quite a lot of pressure on myself. So that is, I guess, one part of JC that was a bit challenging for me. Another thing is that people also will be building their portfolio as the 2 years go by. So there's a tendency to overcommit. So for example, people will be wanting to take on like service learning projects, volunteering, stuff like that. So there's a part where you may get very, very busy. So I guess there's also the fatigue that comes with being a JC student. So you will always hear people saying that they're tired. Yeah. And perhaps like on the social side of things, I can say that as an IP student, I also drifted a lot from my old friends from secondary school. So I think this may be even worse for JE students who may be separated from their secondary school friends. So maybe that's something that you can consider as well. Though I'm not saying that your choice should be swayed by your friends. I'm just saying this is something that most people experience when they enter JC. But the enjoyable parts and the highs of JC are really very high. So for example, I was blessed to have a very close class, and my CCAs are both filled with a lot of people who really understand me, and we share a lot of common passions. And I guess aside from all these activities that JC has, another crucial part of it is that although ACADS and although JC life may be difficult, you're going through it with like other people who perhaps are taking the same subject combination as you, etc., etc. So the support system that you can find in JC through all the difficulty and through all the hard times is something that's very, very precious. So definitely my friends and sort of the fun times that we have. So for example, like going out after school or studying together. So I think these are experiences that make JC enjoyable and worth all the stress. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, anyway. Actually just now I wanted to share a bit more about what I think was shared. I want to add on something on what was shared earlier, which is that there are fewer opportunities to hone practical skills in JC. I think this is not entirely true. I think in JC there are also opportunities for you to find like internships or volunteer outside and gain the experience that you want to need, for example, over the holidays. So certainly there's room for that. So not to worry that in JC there's less, although for sure, I mean, not to worry that there's no opportunity at all, but certainly less than poly, I would say. And perhaps some advice if you want to do well in JC. There's a lot to say because there are a lot of facets of JC that, I mean, that there is to cover. But a personal belief, and this is something I tell like some of my juniors also, I say like, I would say for all like the tests or quizzes or assessments in JC, even if it's not graded, right, I would say still study for it. And you don't have to study a lot. It can be as simple as like looking through the notes or doing a few extra practice questions the night before or in the morning even. But basically don't leave any test completely unstudied for. Because you may hear some of your seniors saying, this test not important, just don't care. But I don't really agree. I would say just study, even if it's just a little bit, so that at least you have some understanding of it. And even if you don't understand it completely, you can catch up in the future and it won't be that hard. Yeah. Okay. I think that's all I have to share. You can ask questions later. Thank you.
Oh my God, Faith, thanks a lot for sharing. I think that was super comprehensive. I was like, wow, this girl is so eloquent. Oh my God. Okay, anyway, I think a lot of people have some questions for you in the chat. Maybe you can just take a moment to look through to see if there's any you'd like to address. I think they're really good questions directed for you.
Okay. I answer all.
No, I think maybe you can choose like 2 to 3. Later, we'll have another separate Q&A and we can have more questions. Maybe I'll just ask you one. I think this one is quite applicable for the general. So I think Carissa asked, what do you need to build a portfolio for JC? And like, why do you need to build a portfolio for JC? Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think I may have said it wrongly earlier, but it's not say like you're building a portfolio for JC, but in JC, a lot of people will be building up their portfolio to enter uni, for example. So I guess there's the tendency for people to, for example, go for internships or like take out a lot of other opportunities outside of the core like academic curriculum or whatever. Yeah, I think that's what I meant. Yeah, or maybe it's just like a my school problem. Maybe my friends are just a bit like, kiasu. But yeah, that's just what I experienced.
Yeah, okay. In a way, I can add in just very quickly here. The whole purpose of building your portfolio is really just to make yourself more all-rounded rather than just like saying I'm academically good. You want to show that you have other skills and leadership positions and stuff. And it will really help you to serve as an extra differentiating factor when applying for certain more competitive university courses. So the whole idea is just to be more all-rounded in nature. Yeah. Maybe another question for you, Faith, is that your subject combi, I think, is a little bit more niche, right? It's quite specialized. So how was your timetable like in JC compared to the general cohort?
To be very frank, right, it was like, it's not a very good timetable. Because, okay, for context, right, I'm the only person in my class with my subject combination. Literally almost every other person takes Helm, which is history, econs, lit, and math. So every time they have econs, I am alone. And I have to stay back on 2 days a week because in my school at least, if you take China studies in Chinese, there's actually like an enrichment period on Monday afternoons. So you have to stay back for that. And I also part of like my school's like humanities program lah. So that also requires me to stay back. But aside from that, I think aside from like staying back now and then, it's mostly okay. Like I don't have instances where I have like no breaks in school or anything. I think the timetable still gives me enough room for that. Just that sometimes I may be late for example, CCA sessions lah, but it's not really a big issue. personally. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot for sharing. I think for those who have more questions for Faith later, you can actually direct it towards her more during the Q&A segment. But thank you so much, Faith, for your sharing. Please stay around. I think a lot of people still have questions for you. But let me move on to our next panelist first, all right, to offer you a different perspective here. We're mixing it up. So up next, we actually have Joshua. So one voice from the poly side. Joshua, are you there?
Yes, hi, I'm here.
Yes, okay, Joshua, it's all yours. Let the folks know how is it like in poly, man.
Okay, so I'm Joshua. I'm a year one in Nanyang Poly Gaotapo. But yeah, so I'm taking mass media management. So I think for me, like when I was in Sec 4, I actually wanted to go to JC. But then my cut-off point didn't really hit the JC I wanted to go to, which was Temasek, JC, and Tampines Meridian, because they were in the east. So after that, I was looking through my options, and I came across mass media management, which at the time I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do in poly. So I was really looking through what options were good for me. So I saw this course, which I thought was a bit interesting, because it had to do with a lot of cameras. And also I think for my course it's a very broad course. So it has both worlds with business and both media. So I think my course really is like it's very broad to what I could learn in this course. Yeah. So a bit about my life in poly. I think like it's a bit different compared to secondary school. I had a lot of more freedom in my day-to-day. Like okay, so in my week, I only go to school 4 or 5 days. So one of the days for me was e-learning, and the rest of the days I had to go to school. But it wasn't the time also was about like 10 to 4, like on average days. So it was quite a lot of freedom. I had a lot of time outside of school. But then for like the projects and all, it was all very like simultaneous that I had to work on. So in poly we had to really like manage our time well to prepare for our upcoming projects, because like they will give you your projects like 4 weeks in time, then you have a lot of different projects to do at the same time. So you have to really work on it. Then after once your project is done, another project will be released. So it was always like simultaneous, and also compared with like the lectures you have to follow up with like in the day-to-day class. So I think in my first year, I had to really like manage my time really well, to really plan out like to catch up on the lesson materials, as well as to work with my group mates for like projects, the archive projects as well. Yeah. So but then I think for poly you have a lot of more free time outside. You can explore different things. So in my course there were a lot more like projects that we can like jump aboard. So like we work with our year threes in a different projects, like hosting a story or like helping them out with their own projects. So it gave us more like exposure to things that we could learn or things that we could work with outside of our course. And we come with CCAs also. It was also another area that we can like explore more and learn more things, and to get like to know more about like the different things that you want to try out lah. So for some of my classmates to have multiple CCAs, but then it was also gets like a bit stressful. For me, I only have one CCA. I'm in sports CCA, so I'm in soccer. So for me, it's also quite stressed here and there, to do with like trainings and to manage my work. But it seems quite manageable for the first year so far. Yeah. And okay, so for a bit more about my course. So again, my course is a mix between business and media. So I chose this course because again it's like helped me to venture out to different things I want to do. So I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do after poly as well. So I chose this course. It was really like give me more options to venture to lah. Yeah. So like for business stuff, I will learn more like I will learn like marketing and advertising, which will be useful, as I saw like in the book. Then also for like the media side, which interests me more, because it was more about like film production, cameras, and like writing scripts for like TV. So I think this course was quite suited for me in the end lah. So I was quite grateful that I chose poly in the end. I ended up in a poly in the end. Yeah. So in poly I would say it's definitely less stress compared to a JC, because I also talked to my JC friends. But then is also you have to really manage your time well. So that's what I will say lah. You have to really manage your time well, and also give you more options to what you want to venture in lah. Yeah. So that's all for me.
Well, thanks a lot for sharing, Joshua. I think that was very insightful. Actually, especially since you were debating between JC and Poly, I think that's a dilemma that a lot of us might be stuck in right now. I think in the chat, Jess has a question that's quite interesting. So, do you have to be an extrovert to do well in Poly since there's a lot of project work?
I don't think you have to be an extrovert because personally myself, I'm an introvert. I'm more of an introvert compared to others. I would say like with project works, it helps you. You definitely have to like come off your comfort zone a bit more to like work with people and to like share ideas more. But then I think like slowly you can get a hang of it lah to like work with people lah. And to I think it's a good skill to have also, like to slowly like open up your own ideas. Okay, so for me, like project works, right? I would normally be the person like most like laid back a bit. Like I wouldn't really chime in my ideas more than the rest. But then I will be more like go with the flow. But then I also will like help contribute here and there. So I think you don't have to be an extrovert. It's just more like you can contribute to the parts that you're more comfortable with lah. And also like step out of your comfort zone a bit more to like share your ideas also. Yeah.
Right. Joshua, if you don't mind, right, let me just go back a little to your final decision, right? After you got your O-level result, you were considering between JC and Poly. Just to go down into that a bit more, what are some of the factors that you considered that ultimately led you to choosing a Poly instead of JC?
Oh, okay. So with my L1 R5, okay, so I got 18. So the ones that I wanted to go to, like Tampines Meridian and Temasek JC, I couldn't go to. So the JCs that I could go to were like in Jurong, like very far away from my house. So that was one thing I considered, like because I knew that JC was also quite stressful, and I didn't want to like travel so far and to go to a JC. So I was more looking at the poly options, and I also like talk to my like teachers and stuff, and they give me advice to more look at poly. So I was looking at the poly. That's why made me chose like more poly than compared to JC after getting my O-level results. Yeah. So then after that, I was looking at the course, then like the different schools that I wanted to go to, and then I landed up in this course. Yeah.
Okay, one final question for you before we move on to the next panelist. Okay, Shane is asking, is it very difficult to maintain GPA?
I would say because it was only my first year. I think it is for my first year. I think it was relatively hard to get a good grade for but my friends they are more like they manage it better, than they get higher grades. And I think maintaining a GPA, I think it will be just consistent, like what they said earlier, like putting the consistent effort. I wouldn't say it's very hard, but I would say is you just have to like manage your time very well and not like get complacent. Because I think for Poly and JC is a bit different. Like our lecturers, our teachers wouldn't really like make us like we catch up on our work and stuff. So it's all your own, mostly it's like your own effort and your own like own time, own target kind of stuff. So it's like you really have to put in your constant effort to maintain like to catch up with the syllabus, as well as to work on your projects well with your group mates. Yeah. And also for projects in my course, okay, for me it's mainly projects and like only very little written work. But I know for other courses in poly, they also have exams where they also write like written exams. But more often is projects, and you have to be consistent to put effort in that, and also maintain to catch up on your lessons. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Joshua. I'm sure the rest might have more questions for you, but we'll just save that for the Q&A. But thanks a lot for sharing. So I think one thing that I think is across the board that we all agree is you really need to be very consistent, right? Self-directed learning. I think that's what we're hearing a lot. Okay, let's move on. Next up, we have Ryan. Hey, oh my God, Ryan, I'm very excited to hear how your life is going on. So Ryan was my ex-student, so let's catch up with Ryan. Ryan, all yours. Share with the rest how JC life is like for you.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'd like to preface this by saying good luck for O-level results on Thursday. All the best, y'all got this. Okay, so I didn't prepare much for this, so I'll just go through like what my thought process was like after I got my results. So on results day, I got 11 minus 4, 7. So then I was thinking of going like Temasek JC, and the reason why I chose JC in the first place because, well, I don't know really what I want to do in my life like yet. And this follows what like Daryl said earlier of how like I don't really know what I want to do. So I just chose JC as like a good buffer so I can have longer to think about what I want to do. I still don't know what I want to do at all. But I feel that this is very necessary because I feel like if I went to poly, I would have to be locked down to something and okay, but could be wrong here. But I feel like I would be locked down to something and changing course would be quite difficult. And I feel like JC, the subject combination will be a bit more versatile for me. So I feel like that's why I was like persuaded to go JC in the first place. And then okay, my week in JC is kind of okay, it's quite tiring. I'm sure I can share my timetable now. Okay, not right now. But school days normally end around like 5:15 p.m. Like because I'm a science student, I take like PCME, H1 econs, physics, chemistry, math. So then the labs will end around like 5:25 p.m. and I'll be like so tired by the end of it. So I feel like that goes to show like quite how intense JC is already because you don't really get much breaks in the case for me because I normally get like lessons and tutorials like non-stop and the lessons can be quite long. So then I feel like that goes to show how like tiring JC can be. Also, another thing to take note is that the pace in JC is like very fast. I'll give an example here. It's like how do I say this? Okay. You know all the dy/dx content or differentiation content that we learned in AMAP Sec 4 and stuff, that was covered in like 10 minutes of a JC lecture. So then I feel like that goes to show like how fast things progress in JC. And like you have so many tests and stuff like every single week and like quizzes and stuff. So I feel like it's very stressful. I can recall the number of points and sometimes I'll text each other and be like, oh my God, I'm dying or something because I was very stressed. So I feel like I think all of you like kind of already have a sensing of how difficult JC is. And then okay, then I'll talk a bit more about my CCA experience. I'm actually in the student council and okay, it is actually quite a lot of commitment, but I felt I needed to join it because I also wanted to build up my portfolio because I'm thinking of aiming for a quite competitive course like computer science. So I felt I needed to build up my portfolio there and that's why I decided to join it. And okay, right now I'm going to talk about actually some tips for the specific subjects of how to score well on them because I picked up quite a fair bit over the year I've been in JC. For physics and chemistry, okay, chemistry I'm still quite bad, so don't take what I say seriously. I feel like in JC practice is really necessary. Like, don't try and spend too long making notes and stuff, cause okay, the content may seem simple at first when you learn it in lectures, cause the teachers will use like quite simple examples and give and like teach you the content. But then when I found like when I was taking like the tutorials and stuff, I was like, oh my God, this is so difficult. And you feel like you really need to think a lot of like all the tutorials and stuff because the content is quite hard. Then for math, what I decided to do was like make a little notebook of like mistakes that I've made and stuff in the content. So I feel like it would be good to document like important learning points from each chapter from there. Then econ and stuff, the moral of the story is just like JC content is you can't apply the same note making strategy here. I feel like practice is really important when it comes to JC. And yeah, another difference that I found between like secondary school and JC is the fact that like yes, it's way longer. Also, the teachers don't really like seek effort to like push you too hard. Like I know I found a couple of my friends who didn't really do their work, or then the teacher didn't really like push them so much. It's just like, oh, why do you not get this done? Or whatever. It's not like they'll shout at you or whatever. So I feel like it definitely falls on you in a sense to like catch up with your work and also keep up with your studies. Also, nothing as well is that your teacher will not like send reminders to you saying, oh, this is a test or whatever, because you are expected to be like independent really because young adults. Yeah, then I feel like okay, I'll take this opportunity to actually answer one of the questions now of what being an SC in JC is like. Okay, so currently right now I'm actually in the phase of planning our orientation for JC ones next year, and also like planning the SC orientation for next year's batch of counselors. It's actually quite intense because you have to go for like meetings quite regularly and like have calls and stuff with other counselors to like facilitate the project. And also keep in mind you have to like balance this as well with like your other commitments as well. So like it can be quite tiring at times. But it usually comes across of like, oh, Tuesday or Wednesday, I have to stay back and have a meeting with the other counselors to say like, oh, like what are everyone's updates with their other projects and stuff. And also you're split into several subcoms. In my case, I'm in like welfare, so I take charge of like student welfare and stuff, like how to manage stress during exam period. Then there's other wings as well of like house of how to improve house spirit. So I feel like SE is quite intensive as well, and it can be quite draining because like you have to talk to many people as well, like during every meeting. So that is something to take into consideration as well. And also, I like to end this off by actually saying that don't really like make sure you come to your own decision and like counter all the factors and stuff. In my case, I actually consider like how close TJ was to my house, and also like, oh, I prefer science stream and stuff. So that's why I decided to take PCME over other combinations. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say for now. Good luck in O-level results, guys.
So Ryan, I have a very interesting question for you because you've been through O-level and now you've been through 1 year in JC, right? Just to give a very realistic understanding for those that are listening, can you give us an estimate of how much more difficult is A-level or JC compared to O-level, what you went through?
Okay, I'll give a quick example here is that during O-level, my grades were like decent. Teacher that will know specifically my chemistry was okay, touch wood. And then when I came to JC, I feel like it's kind of hard because the amount of the chapter is like very big and condensed. So for example, chemistry, I'll give an example of how, covalent bonding was just mainly just like covalent bonds and like the sharing of electrons between two molecules. In JC, they will really dive into like well more in depth. They'll go into like how there's different types of covalent bonds and like intermolecular forces between molecules. So everything I feel like goes very much in depth. And also like another case as well for physics is that like you will learn much more about like how Newton's like 3 laws work. And I felt a good indication of how hard JC is that my grades really fell. I think in mid-years I was like failing. My chemistry was like a E, like almost fail. Physics was like a C or something. Then math like C as well. But I feel like that goes to show because you have so much to study outside the content. I feel like it's a lot more intense. Sometimes even in the exam as well, I feel like you have like not much time to do like questions as well, because I think 3 hours for some of the exam is not enough. And then I also take this opportunity to answer like this Sophie's question of why did I take PCME. Okay, you hear a lot about how PCME is like the most versatile combination, because for me, I felt like at first math was really necessary because I felt like in secondary school, I had a particular like aptitude for math, and I definitely liked the subject. And I felt like in secondary school as well, I was like definitely more inclined towards the sciences. I was not really a humans person in secondary school. My humans like SS and Geog and stuff were not that great. So yeah, I felt like PCME was really helpful there. It was the better choice for me there. Also because like physics, I actually genuinely like the subject and might want to pursue that in university. So I feel like it made sense there to like choose the subject based on what I like. Because come on, like JC is really tough enough as it is. Having that little bit of passion, as I'm sure the previous panelists had mentioned earlier, would help you go a long way and get you through those nights when you're like, oh, why am I doing this and stuff. So yeah, I feel like that kind of sums how difficult JC is. I feel like it is basically like times five like difficulty. It's like a secondary school on steroids. I compare that. There's a number of times when I was like complete breakdown or like wanting to cry and stuff because like the day before promos or stuff, I was like, oh my god, I haven't studied enough yet. So not the most relaxing of educational journeys. All right.
For sure. So thanks a lot, Ryan. I mean, later on, for those JC interested students, right? You got any science related? You ask Ryan, and then any like more arts related, okay? You can always direct it because Faith here is like more humans, right? Then Ryan here is more science, so you can ask accordingly. Okay. Of course, you all have a lot more questions, but we'll take it in the Q&A. Let's move on to Nicole finally, right? So Nicole, are you there? You want to share more about your course?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Nicole, year 2, studying Early Childhood Development and Education. So my course is highly sought after, and in TP, it is probably the course with the highest intake. So if you want to know more about my course specifically, you can feel free to ask later during the Q&A. But for now, I will share more about poly life. So in poly, you're expected to be more independent because you will have different timetables, and sometimes at different classes. There are a lot more projects to do, either individual or group ones, and you really have to plan your time wisely. I think it's good to be adaptable also, because you're bound to meet all sorts of people, from the super hardworking ones to the can't be bothered with life, unmotivated type of people. And people are always stressed about like finding a good group of people to work with so that it is easier, you know, to get like your GPA and all. But if you face difficult people, you just got to like make it work and meet the requirements and due dates. So in TP, there are also TP fundamental modules where it teaches us skills like workplace communication, effective communication, how to prepare resumes or an interview, innovation, and like global studies. So a lot of my friends think that they weren't very useful, but in every module, there are important and helpful skills to pick up, which one can like become more confident, you know, in when they are put into the working world. So I don't think it is helpful to come into poly with the mindset that it is easier than JC, because both schools are difficult in their own ways. So for JC, you might be mugging throughout the night to revise for an exam, but for poly, you might be doing assignments through the night. So personally, it has never happened to me, but yes, time management. So I feel JC is more structured and poly is a lot more flexible. It is also less academically taxing, and I would say you get to learn relevant modules related to your course. For me, I took pure sciences and A Math in secondary school, but I'm learning how to be a preschool teacher, so all those subjects, not gonna lie, I really miss studying science like pure bio, but yeah. Also, don't worry if you haven't learned the necessary subjects for your selected course, because there are foundational classes for that. So poly is definitely more chill, at least for my course. I have been having 4 day of lessons 4 days a week, and so it's either in the morning or like in the afternoon. So those times when I'm not having lessons, I'll be watching lectures or doing assignments. The best part about poly is joining interest groups, clubs, and CCAs. You get to socialize and know more people from other courses. I actually feel a lot more closer to my CCA mates than my course mates, and because we get to train in the evening after our class and then go out for a nice dinner. So train and suffer together, and also laugh and rant about like every annoying thing that could happen, like shitty timetable or lectures, you know. There are also many events that you can take part in, like community service events, push card events, talks, movie and game nights, etc. These are activities that will get you to socialize with more people and really get out there and expose yourself to the world, take ownership, and become more independent. So, but don't worry, all these activities are not compulsory, especially if like you're introverted, but you're highly encouraged to join at least some. So similar to secondary school, you get CU points, which is like CCA points, which you can deduct from your O-level score. But sometimes that doesn't really matter, because just do what you like and have fun. Most importantly, choose poly for the right reason. So all the events and school culture can sound appealing, but you should come to poly if you know what you want to do in the future. So if you're unsure, what might help would be choosing a sector where your interest lies. So if it's helping people, you can narrow down your options to School of Humanities and Social Science, or if you enjoy studying science and doing practicals, you can look at applied science. Even if you don't know what you want to do, you can still come to poly, but just choose a course that is bearable and something that you would enjoy for the next 3-4 years. So yeah, I've talked to many people, and majority of them don't study the same course in university. Yeah, so I hope all I've shared helps you. Yeah.
Thanks, Nicole, a lot for sharing. I think there's a question here directed to you. Is like, would you say like all the project work takes up a lot of time, like meeting discussion? Maybe just give us a figure in your head, like for one particular project, how much time per week will you need to dedicate to it?
I think it really depends on your group mates and how fast you work, because you have to work with different people with different learning styles now. So I cannot really say how long it takes to do a project, but yeah, it really depends on your group mates. Yeah.
I saw another question that's pretty good, which is, how do you find the transition from secondary school to poly to be very difficult? What were like the most difficult thing, like when you entered year one, right? What was like most shocking to you? What was most different?
Yeah, I think I was quite overwhelmed by the transition, because I felt like, oh, now I have to do everything by myself. I need to find where I can read my assignment descriptors or which classes to go and everything. But I think what helped, and at least in TP, is that they had this module where the teacher kind of like spend some time with the class to talk about how you feel during the transition, and like not to be so afraid of it lah. Yeah, I mean, it's normal to feel overwhelmed because it's really different from secondary school, but you slowly get the hang of it with the support from your teachers and your classmates who are going through the same thing as you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot for sharing. I think that was really a very in-depth sharing. I think all four panelists, wow, you guys said what needed to be said. Amazing stuff. Okay, of course, later on, we'll still have a Q&A segment. If you have very specific questions that you want to direct towards the panelists, you can actually type it in the chat. So it's like maybe like a Nicole, can you tell me more about blah, 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 Or even if you want to direct your questions towards me, sure. I mean, I'll be happy to answer. But before we go on any further, before we go into the Q&A segment, we'd just like to talk about the giveaway. So this giveaway will take a bit of time. We'll actually announce the winner at the end. Now, how does this giveaway work? So we do this every year. So, I mean, all of you might have been familiar with OVERMUGGED and what we do, but whether it's the free notes, curated notes, or you attended any crash course, or even any of our online revision, just share with us, how OVERMUGGED has helped you in any way throughout your O-level journey. So it'll be very simple. Once you leave your review, Shannon will be picking the top 3 most wholesome answers, and then we'll just send you the digital copy of the GV tickets. All right. So right now, I think there's a bit of time now. So if you want, you can actually take out your phone or another device. I'll also send the link in the chat for those of you who want to leave a review directly through a link. But if you don't want to do it, it's also okay. But if you want to participate in the giveaway, this is just a very simple way to share with us and also for us to understand how better we can help you in the future as well. So after this, we'll actually jump into the Q&A segment. So if you have any questions, now will be the perfect time for it. But if you want to leave us a review and participate in the giveaway, now's a good chance as well. All right, so last year we got a lot of answers and we were really very thankful, and we also used those reviews to find out a bit more about what we can do. So this whole webinar was also possible with the help of the panelists. But now with the remaining 25 minutes or so, as you're leaving your reviews, it's also a perfect chance for you to ask the panelists any question. So now, we will announce the 3 winners at the end of the webinar at 9:30 after this Q&A segment. So for the rest of you who were holding back your questions when the panelists were sharing, now's the perfect chance for you to type it in the chat. I'll be trying my best to go through as many of the questions as possible, but I ask for your understanding if we are not able to go through all of them. All right. It will also be very helpful if you direct your question towards the panelists themselves, or if there's a generic question, I might direct it to one of the panelists to answer. So I'll just start the ball rolling with a question. Can you take pure bio, double science, and go to poly? So I heard a lot of people go poly with that combination, but I rarely hear people going to JC with that combination. Pure bio, double science. Maybe I can just take that question directly. If you, I mean, related to a previous question earlier, if you take combined versus you take pure, right, and you're heading to JC, definitely taking pure, you have a much bigger advantage, purely because when you take pure, you already learn the content, while in combined, maybe some of that content or that chapter was chopped off. So when JC begins, right, you are actually expected to know the content for pure. So if you took combined, you actually need to catch up. There will be a sort of like a bridging module for you, but it'll be very quick. So if you're taking combined and you intend to enter pure science for JC, you need to be prepared that it will be a very steep learning curve. It's not that it's impossible, but it's just that you need to put in the extra effort because the pure science kids have already learned that content, which you haven't. All right, so it's not impossible, but it won't be easy lah. You need to be very self-directed on that front. Okay, maybe I'll direct this question to both Joshua as well as Nicole. Will CCA in poly affect your GPA? To either of you, if you want to take the question. So CCA in poly. Maybe Joshua, you said you were in soccer, right?
Okay, I think it doesn't really affect it. Okay, I think it matters how you manage lah. I think how you cope. Like for certain people, like CCA can be really like tough, for them to like cope with their studies also. But okay, for me, my first year was generally quite tough because it wasn't like first year or like adapting to poly, so it was tougher to adapt with like CCA and also like with my own studies. But I think for other people who are also in sports CCA, it'll be easier for it's easier for them to cope with both. So I think it depends on how much effort you put into your studies though, and how much effort you put into like managing your time as well as your studies lah. Yeah.
Joshua, am I right to say that the CCA doesn't affect your GPA directly?
Yeah, it doesn't affect your GPA directly. CCA gives you more exposure to different things that you want to try out. Like if you want to learn new skill, if you want to help your like portfolio, it helps if you want to like join a CCA. But it doesn't affect your GPA at all. It's just how you cope with it.
Thanks a lot, Joshua. I think there's a question specifically directed for Nicole. So Shah wants to know more about early childhood and what you do for your projects in your course. Would you mind sharing a little bit?
Okay, so for early childhood, we begin our first year learning about child development theory. So we learn more about the child, the best environments they learn and thrive in, nature and nurture. So knowing all these theories, it help us better craft lesson plans for the children. So our projects started off in year one, mainly just applying the theories into practice. And as for year two, it becomes a lot more hands-on because we plan specific lessons for children. And for early childhood, every year you actually go for practicum. So for year one, it was about 2 weeks. So you'll be sent to a center to observe the class and get to know the children. And then as for year two, which what I did last year was a 1-month attachment where I planned my own lessons and I actually conducted it for the children and got evaluated at the center. So yeah, this is how the projects are usually like. It's really mainly focused on creating lesson plans. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot, Nicole. Faith, I think there are some questions directed towards you. There were two that I picked up that I think would be good if you could answer. The first is more about So you were from the IP side, so you directly transitioned from IP to JC. So I think what some of us might be interested in is, do you think it's very difficult to transfer from, say, a normal secondary school and then you just suddenly jump into Hwa Chong, for example? So how would that transition be like from your perspective as an IP student compared to your JAE friends?
Wow. Okay. I think okay, as an IB student, right, I feel like my perspective is quite limited lah, and it's confirmed won't be biased in some sense. But at least from what I observed from like some of my JAE friends in HC, I think they seem to be adjusting pretty well actually. I think many of them shared that they were initially very scared that they wouldn't be able to fit in, because I think a lot of people in HC college section are like from either high school or from NYGH. So I think a lot of them had that concern that they wouldn't be able to like make new friends or anything. But I think a lot of them said that the IP students are also very friendly and they won't like really exclude like JE students or anything lah. So I think the transition will be okay. Although, another thing I heard from, I think, one of my JE friends is that there's some content that the IP students have already covered in secondary school, while the JE students did not, as part of like their O-level curriculum. So I think maybe in that sense, you will just have to work a little bit harder to catch up on that. But she also shared that her IP classmates and all were very kind and obliging when she asked them to like teach her that content, the content that she missed out. Yeah, so she said overall it's not bad. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot. I think I saw another question directed to Ryan. So Ryan, how is econs like in JC? Because it's a very new subject. I think most secondary schools don't actually offer it. So can you share a little bit how is econs like?
Okay, so for context, I took H1 econs, so maybe I can't like share more about some side of econs, because for paper one, I only do like case study papers, which is kind of similar to like social studies, your like SBQ or something like that. I find for econs, okay, econs is generally what you're studying is like money, like the market and stuff. So like for example, COVID hit, then therefore the demand for masks like going up and stuff. I find okay, econs is quite hard in a sense, especially if like you're not really like a humans person, because it requires you to like be able to like like pick out evidence for like a source and stuff, and then like plug it in your answer or something like that. Also really like relying on your question analysis skills and stuff. And also another thing as well is that generally for like most subjects in JC, as I said before, like it really tests like your time management. So like for econs, okay, funny story, for my Bromo exam, out of like 50 marks, I left like 15 marks blank because I couldn't finish it in time. So I felt like this shows kind of how difficult econs is, in the sense that humans papers it is like very straightforward, you just study for it. But then the thing is that whether you can actually perform well in the exam is a whole another different thing entirely, because of course the question for that day can be like very difficult and you might not know how to answer it. So my tip would be just like ask your teachers for like more practice papers and stuff. That was what I did, and like try and get more exposure to different types of questions and go from there. Then make essay plans of like how do you answer like this question, like why is there a shortage of this good now. I feel yeah, the motto that comes stressing here is like practice, 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 where you can gain more exposure to like what questions will come out in econs, because the content is rather like the same things will be tested. It's just whether you're able to see what content the question wants you to reproduce or what they want you to analyze. So my biggest tip for like econs is just practice. Of course, must be familiar with the content first, but like yeah, practice, practice, practice. And also your teachers, I can show you, will be very willing to like give you consults and stuff, as long as you like make the initiative to go and like ask them for consults first. So my overall tip is practice, and also don't be hesitant to ask for help in JC, because I'm sure your teachers understand what you're going through and like will be more than willing to help you. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for sharing. I mean, I know econs to be a very scary topic because you haven't taken it before, but I think what would be helpful is actually for you all to go and find out more what the subject is about. Later, I'll be sharing secret information that we're having another event actually to share more about the different subject combinations, but I'll share that towards the last 5 minutes of this session. The next 10 minutes, let's continue with the questions. Joshua, I think there was a question directed directly to you in terms of how the facilities like for media management at Nanyang. And what ultimately made up your mind to choose exactly this course, which I think you mentioned a bit briefly earlier.
Okay, so I think the facilities, I would say they're not bad. They are like in the interior of NYP is not that bad. The exterior a bit not quite old, but I think the material, the interior facilities are quite not bad. The cameras all there is it's quite high tech. I think the first time I went there, I was quite shocked at the studio. I'll be honest, cause like it actually looks like a really like a high production studio. For me, I think why I chose like this course. Actually, I was debating between Temasek Poly, their mass comm. I was debating between that because it was actually quite near to my house. But then I chose NYP mass media management because again like it is broader course compared to mass comm because mass comm is directly based on like media. But for mass media management, you have also like the business aspect of like study. So like you learn how to market, how to advertise, mainly based on like media, like using your media to advertise, to market, and also like you learn a lot of like accounting also, which is not what I'm interested in, but it's also useful. So that's why I chose it in the end. Yeah. Because I also really wasn't clear of my choice. So I was trying to make it as broad as possible so that it'll be helpful for me in the future.
All right, thanks a lot, Joshua, for sharing. So we're seeing the reviews coming in. So for those of you who want to participate in the giveaway, it will qualify up till 9:29. So you have the next 12 minutes if you're still leaving the review. Now, directing the next question to Faith. So Vivian in the chat asked that she has a very clear interest, right, in the art stream. But at O-level, she only took combined Geog and SS. I do not know how much you can address her concerns, but would she is it very difficult for H2 Geog, assuming she only took combined level, as best as you can share? This one maybe I'll come in after you.
Wait, sorry, she took what in O-levels?
Okay, actually, this one maybe it'll be a bit difficult for you to answer because you didn't take combined. Okay, maybe I can come in to answer this because for myself, just to share, I took pure geography at secondary. I took combined history SS at O-level as well. I went on to JC to take H2 Geog. All right. So let's say if you only took combined and you're planning to go into the art stream, I would say that once again, there's a certain breach that you need to cover yourself because for you to jump straight to H2, a lot of the content taught in pure will be brought over. So once again, you'll be missing out on the content that other students that have learned in pure that you haven't learned. So in order to bridge that gap, you need to take ownership yourself to catch up on the content that you are lagging behind in. Of course, I think back to what Faith has mentioned, I think it's very important to take subjects that you're interested in so that you don't bore yourself out when you're studying it. So it's important to do so, but you need to be aware of the potential downside of that because you need to do some catch up on your own. I think that's the best way for me to put it. Okay. I think for Anu, question directly for Faith would be how's H2 Lit and H2 History? You take both, right?
Yeah, sorry, just not lag a bit. Yeah, I do take both. Wait, the question was what it's like, isn't it?
Yeah, how is it like? Maybe you can share a little bit more.
Okay. So for H2 Lit, I'll start with that. We take 2 papers for A levels. So paper 1 is what we call the main paper. So I think regardless of which JC you're from, you will take Lit paper 1. And between paper 2 and paper 3, both of them are actually what we call elective papers. So the paper that you sit for depends on your school. So you don't actually have a choice which paper you want to take. My school does paper 3, and the theme for paper 3 is like mind and self. So it's basically like, it's very abstract concept, but we just do poetry and stuff that is relevant to themes of like, for example, mental health, identity, stuff like that. Or at least that's what I've covered so far. For paper 2, H2 for like H2 lit paper 2, I'm not very sure about the content that it covers, but I think it's something along the lines of Renaissance literature. I think you can Google the lit syllabus if you want to. So I would say, I mean, lit as a subject, it doesn't really vary much from perhaps like what you've covered in secondary school. So it will usually be along the lines of things like analyzing plays, analyzing prose, analyzing poetry. So these are the 3 main types of texts that we'll cover in H2 Lit. The question types are quite different from secondary school also. So a lot of people say that H2 Lit is kind of a subject where everyone starts from square one together and you just slowly figure it out as time goes by. I think I would say H2 Lit, in order to excel at H2 Lit, you certainly need a passion for it, and perhaps a passion for like reading as well. Because if you don't have that kind of passion, it's very difficult to be able to write impressively, such that you can score really, really well for H2 Lit. Yeah. Wait, I was gonna say something. I just lost my train of thought. Okay, anyway. I think Lit is quite an enjoyable subject. I think some may say is not very useful in their future or whatever. But a lot of my friends who eventually chose to take Lit over econs, they say that they don't regret their decision because Lit is really a very fun subject to study, even though it's quite stressful. Oh yeah, I remember what I was gonna say. What I was gonna say is the thing about taking Lit is that there's always an element of uncertainty in the exams, because there's always the section that's like unseen poetry or unseen prose. So if you are unable to, for example, grasp your A-level text, then there could be a situation where, for example, like you flop the essay lah. But there's also a skill that comes with practice, like how you grasp the key points and how you look and what lens you use to look at a text. So that is, I guess, something that turns people off from taking H2 Lit and choose like a more so-called secure or like studyable subject like econs. Yes, okay. Sorry, I thought very long, but like, okay, H2 Lit is actually my, H2 History is like my favorite subject now. So what I've covered in J1 is, it's also 2 papers. There's no elective paper for this one, so everyone just takes both. For paper 1 is more of like international history. I haven't really looked at the syllabus for next year, but what I've covered this year is we basically learned the entire Cold War. So if you're a history student, you would know that you cover, for example, from the start of the Cold War to like Korean War, Cuban Missile Crisis, everything in between until the end of the Cold War. So that's what we learned for paper 1 history this year. And for paper 2 is actually a paper that is fully concentrated on Southeast Asian history. So we just learn about the history of these Southeast Asian nations. So we learn about, for example, how they achieve political stability or what democracy looked like in these countries, and how these countries achieved or didn't achieve national unity. And it's very interesting to me. Like I'm just a history person and I enjoy it a lot. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for sharing, Faith. I think there's one question for Ryan, I guess you can answer. Same for Faith if you want to chime in. How was project work like? Since I think both of you just finished it few months ago. So H1 subject project work, this is actually graded in A levels. So how was your experience like? Maybe Ryan, you want to go ahead first?
Okay, so quick summary of project work in the sense that like you pick something that you're kind of interested in, like an area that you're interested in. For example, in my case, I chose like budgeting for like fresh graduates. Then you're supposed to like write up like a report on it, or like, what are the problems? What causes this problem? What are the consequences of this problem? Then think of like solutions, like in-depth solutions to try and address it. And after you submit this report in, you're supposed to give like an oral presentation on like the general basis of your like project and like answer a question afterwards. Then I'll say PW is really quite self-explanatory in the sense that it's really dependent on like your group mates are. Like in my case, I was fortunate enough to have like several good group mates who put in the work if I asked them to. Although I did have like one slacker who didn't really put in his weight when needed. For PW, in a sense, my biggest advice is to like make sure, don't be afraid to like pressure your group mates to like submit in their work as possible, because this is your grade that you are after. So I definitely feel that if you want to score well, you need to definitely put the pressure on your group mates to like put in their work as well, because this is not a solo project. So in my case, I surfaced the issue of my second group mate to my teacher. So I felt in project work, it's really important to like also try and step out of your comfort zone to like develop somewhat of a good relationship with your group mates, because although you all don't need to be like best friends or something, but it will make your working relationship a lot easier, because it will make project work and discussions feel like less of a chore. So I feel like for project work, my biggest tip is, of course, don't be afraid to be firm and ask your group mates to back up or submit in their work and stick to the deadlines. And also, as well, like make sure to try and at least maintain a good relationship with them as well, so it makes like discussion time feel less of a chore and PW like less of a hassle to complete. Yeah.
Faith, any last point to add on PW before we will call it the end of the Q&A?
Personally, I would say I also had pretty good group mates lah. So it was not a bad experience for me, although the experience certainly varies. So I had some friends who had roommates who didn't really pull their weight, so they ended up having to tank the project. So I think it's a very different experience, and I would say all the best. I hope you get a good group. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's about it. I think there are still a lot more questions, and really apologize if we weren't able to answer all of them. I hope that as much as we could, we provided as much information as we can, right? Within this 1.5, and I don't want to hold everybody back too much on this Sunday night. So I think next up, I think we can move in to announce the winners for the giveaway. I think that will be quite exciting. But before I go into that, Shannon will be announcing it. I just wanted to share about the next event that we'll be doing. So for the upcoming event, this one is actually taking place after you get your O-level result, after you choose your JC, and before you decide on your subject combination. So I noticed today's session, some of you were like uncertain about like, whether I should take this subject combi, a hybrid combination and stuff. So we will be hosting this hybrid event. That means there's also physical / online that you can attend. So how does this session work? We'll be sharing more about the subject combination system in A-level, as well as how it will affect your university admission. You can even book a one-to-one consultation with any of our tutors to go through your specific scenario, and we'll be able to best advise. This session is taking place on a Sunday, 5th of February. There will be 2 sessions, 2 to 4 and 4 to 6 p.m. For the physical attendance, you'll actually even get a free goodie bag with a lot of like stuff inside. But take note, it's limited to 20 packs per session physically. So if you want to attend physically, it's only up to 40 packs. The sign up is not yet ready because I'm lazy. I haven't set it up, okay? But once we announce it on IG or on Telegram, you'll be notified first thing. If you want to get the earliest notification, I think you'll be helpful if you join our A-level Telegram channel, because we'll be announcing there as well. So sign up will be up probably in 2 weeks' time, 1 to 2 weeks' time. So keep a lookout for it if you're interested in attending. Of course, if you're a bit lazy to travel down all the way to our Bukit Timah outlet, you can also attend the session via online through Zoom lah. Okay, but I think let's not hold back. Let's announce the winners for the giveaway. Shannon, you want to go ahead to announce the 3 winners?
Wow, it was very difficult. Got a lot. It's harder than A-levels, yeah. I narrowed down to 3. First, we have Natasha or Natalie. I think there's a double post. Yep, either one. It's the same person. Is it the same person? Okay, you can PM me after this. Then there's a Ipo Phyu. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. EIPOEPHYU. Okay, let me just type in the chat lah. Then you can PM me. Okay, we have Natalie and Natasha, and the last one we have Joel Tan. Yeah,
Okay, so yeah, thank you so much for all of you that attended this event, and a huge shout out to the 4 panelists. I'm like super impressed. You guys all speak so well. What's going on? Okay, anyway, thanks a lot for sharing. And for those that attended, I hope this session was helpful in getting you more information before you make the final choice. But most importantly, good luck for your O-level result release. I hope that all your hard work will pay off. And more importantly, you get to go to the next post-secondary option that you're looking for. All right. For the winners of the giveaway, thank you to all for leaving the reviews. It means a lot to us and the work we do. But for the 3 students, you can just PM Shannon. He will get your contact details and we'll send you the digital GV vouchers. For the rest who are considering attending our JC subject combination hybrid event, please give it a look out. I'll announce it once all the details are confirmed. But looking forward to meeting some of you in person or via online again soon. All right, and with that, we come to the end of today's session. Have a great night, and I hope you all don't feel too stressed over receiving your O-level results on Thursday. Results are fixed already, okay? So you just go and sleep, okay? And I think more important, you want to look at the options that you have once you get your results, okay? Good luck. I think really good luck, and I pray that you guys get the results that you want. All right, that's all, right? So let's call it a night, people. And thank you so much to the panelists. You guys were amazing. Okay, the winners, please remember to contact Shannon. So the rest, have a good night's sleep. Thanks for spending your Sunday night with us. Okay, for Faith, Joshua, Nicole, as well as Ryan, really a huge shout out. Thanks for doing this.
Wait, let me see.
But you can call it a night too. Thanks. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.